Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Anthem video, and today I thought I'd take a moment to talk about some of my personal hopes for the game. I've covered a lot of information we've had so far, be that from my own personal hands-on time and interviews, or tweets from developers, live streams and the like, and I'll of course continue to do that as and when information presents itself. But I thought it'd be fun today to just go over a few things that are important to me, things that I really hope we see in Anthem, because they're ultimately things that will keep me playing for many hours, and they'll just make for an overall awesome experience. So, here are 5 things I really hope to see in Anthem when the game launches next year. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, if you agree or disagree, and also let me know if there's anything else you guys would like to see too. Now, kicking things off at number 1, let's start with secrets and aspirational loot. In games like these, games that have these vast open worlds to explore, the freedom to essentially go wherever you please, and plenty of dark, hidden caves, abandoned structures, and other landmarks that lend themselves to these sort of things, one of the best things is exploring that land and discovering cool items, ideally loot. And conversely, there's nothing worse than having a massive world where you're free to explore every corner, only knowing that there's really no point in actually doing that. Sure, it's fun to be an explorer, but if you know that climbing to the top of that super tall mountain peak and then dropping into the canyon will ultimately result in you just needing to fly out again, that's hardly exciting. And while sure, you can't hide something in every corner, having reasons to go exploring, looking for things, loot that you otherwise wouldn't obtain if you just complete the story is a great way to A, make the world feel more alive, and B, bring the community together. Destiny has done that in the past and has recently done it again this past week with the quest for what is essentially the Black Spindle again. Events that we aren't told about, things that often need to be uncovered in elaborate ways, things that aren't solved just by one person alone but instead sees communities banding together, sharing their knowledge, trying things until eventually the code is cracked or the secret is uncovered. Having mysteries like that in game, while few and far between, do go a long way to making the world feel special. Knowing that there could be a secret out there that you just haven't found yet, even after thousands of hours of playing, that sort of thing is incredible, and it's even better if the reward is actually good. A weapon, an item, a unique cosmetic that few other people have, those sorts of rewards make people look at the world in a very different way. Suddenly, every blinking light or dead-end corridor could actually be a mystery waiting to be solved. Then in number 2, I really want the crafting system to be deep. We've already had confirmation that there will be crafting in game, and that you can go out into the world and collect plants, among other materials, that then feed back into this crafting system. But if it ends up being something like, grab 10 plants for your next Javelin upgrade component, it's going to be a little bit short-lived, and might actually end up feeling a little bit more annoying than anything. If you look at games, particularly MMOs, that do crafting well, it's typically always something you can do, but are not forced to do, but the system is deep enough so that those who choose to invest time into it can really spend their time perfecting their craft, in turn making some really cool items. What would be even cooler is if there was some sort of in-game auction house, so people could then take the items they craft or find around the world and then sell them on the auction house for in-game money. That's something I sunk hundreds of hours into in World of Warcraft back in the day, and it's also really fun to just log on and see what other people are selling. And naturally, if crafting was deep enough to allow people to craft a wide range of items, this would then be a way for players to supply others with those too. At this stage, we obviously don't know how deep the customization system goes, so it's really hard to get an idea for the sorts of things you'll be able to craft. But if they can find a way to add a layer of depth to the crafting system, then it's those sort of ambient activities that can keep people busy for hours on end when they're taking a break from the core gameplay loop. Then next up at number 3, and this is something I'm pretty sure we're all hoping for, and that is a serious and challenging endgame, ideally with some sort of raid-like activity or something of equivalent excitement. Essentially something that players can gear up for and work through in order to score some sweet loot. Sure, loot in these sorts of games is what makes the world go round and it keeps the wheel spinning, so to speak. So long as there's something to obtain out there, there's a reason to keep playing. However, at the same time, without sufficient endgame, that loot grind can become rather meaningless very quickly. The Division 1 had a ton of loot for players to go after, and a ton of options for build diversity, and while they did introduce more challenging activities like incursions, ultimately the endgame still wasn't there, and that then had the knock-on effect of making new builds a little bit less exciting. This is something that Massive have learned with Division 2, since they're adopting an endgame first mindset for development, but it's something we are for sure going to need in Anthem. Now I mention raids all the time because that's the content that I personally enjoy. I know they're not for everyone, and I agree that endgame should be more than just raids. But the point I'm making here is that we need something that challenges us, something that warrants those hundreds of hours of farming just to get that shoulder-mounted rocket upgrade that makes the first phase of the raid boss that little bit easier. And naturally, with challenging endgame content often comes more exciting loot that is tied to that activity. And that's also something that needs to happen. While I appreciate not everyone likes having to do specific activities for specific gear, it is a model that works, and for good reason. Getting everything from everywhere ultimately results in a watered down experience across the board. You want those moments where you can look at someone, inspect their gear, and be like, yo, where did you get that from? To which they'll reply, I got it off the final boss from the XYZ raid. That's much more exciting than, I just farmed a random activity and it dropped. Good luck, bro. So yeah, endgame, without question, is what keeps people playing, and the challenge is what makes it fun. However, the other aspect that keeps people playing is number 4, customization and personalization. Now this is something we know is present. My hope here is once again, depth. We know you can change your paint job on your javelin, and we know there'll be some cool options within those, some even themed after existing BioWare IP. We also know you can get weapons, grenades, armor and shoulder mounted cannons or weapons. Those are all items that factor into the loot pools. We also know there are a good number of loot rarity tiers, with the top tier fitting that aspirational model. Additionally, having spoken to Jonathan Warner at E3, he assured me that the personalization goes beyond just paint jobs. But the question is, how far? That is the important factor. I use Division as an example once again. It's a game I love, a game I sunk thousands of hours into, but also a game that was flawed. Again, many of those flaws they intend to address in number 2. But in the Division 1, despite all the cosmetic clothing options that dropped, people ultimately ended up looking very similar. So you had this effect where even as a level 30 perfectly geared player, you didn't really feel that different to your mate that just jumped back on after having not played the game for 3 months. And that's something I really hope Anthem addresses. Knowing that our choices will fall within the 4 javelins, I really want there to be some drastic cosmetic options that truly do allow us to stand out. One of my favourite things about MMOs and these types of games is when you walk into social spaces and you see someone fully geared and you're like, whoa, I want that. I remember the first time I ever played World of Warcraft and made my way to Dalaran before I was supposed to, and then stood there with all the raiders when they were forming their party, and you see people with this incredible looking armour next to you in your basic gear, and you aspire to be like them when you grow up. And while the quote-unquote social space in Anthem is personal, I still want to be able to party up with my friends, play the same javelin as them, and look completely different. And that also applies to gear choices too. I'm really hoping there are tons of weapon types, mods and abilities that can really mix up the way you play. Sure, we might only have one super ability per javelin, but that doesn't mean other stuff can't be drastically different. And then finally, in at number 5, a much smaller ask in the grand scheme of things, but I really like a shooting range or a training room, basically somewhere I can test out weapons. This ask is sort of twofold. As someone that makes videos, a space like this is incredibly useful to test weapons, run the numbers, try out builds and configurations, and ultimately use that information to then provide valuable content for the wider audience. But on a more personal level, it's just nice to be able to try things out without having to load into the world, go looking for a mob of enemies, shoot them, and either wait for them to respawn or go looking again. The shooting range in the Division 1 was incredibly useful, as was the newly added training room in Monster Hunter World, so something similar, a space to just go wild, would be super handy. But that, my friends, is pretty much it for now. Those are my main asks for Anthem, things that I'd love to see and things that will keep me playing for a very long time. Again, let me know in the comments down below if you guys have got any more, and thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.